A very good morning, everybody. We've got people signing in, so we'll just give this a minute or two as more participants join, and then we'll kick it off. So bear with us for another minute or so, maybe 2 minutes, and then we'll get started. For those of you just joining us, thank you so much for being on time. We will give this another, I think I've been told, another minute or so before we get started as other individuals continue to join in, and then we'll kick it off. Bear with us, we'll be right with you. All right, we will officially get started now as people continue to pour in. A very good morning to everyone. And to formally introduce myself, my name is Edward Matty. I am the managing partner for CCM Consultancy, a management consulting firm that focuses on people development and culture transformation in organizations. Today's topic is quite exciting for me. As much as I call myself a managing partner, at the end of the day, I am truly in sales at heart. And if any of you are naturally an entrepreneur or startup, needless to say, we're all in the sales business. I came out to Dubai 13 years ago to set up CCM Consultancy. And obviously, what started off as a team of one in a tiny little shared desk or shared space today has grown to significantly more than that. But obviously, everything starts with humble beginnings. And this today is about really how can we do that? How can we build a little bit faster as we talk about building that sales team and, more importantly, the strategy that we're looking for. Now, needless to say, some of you are already using the chat feature, and please continue to do so. If there's any questions that you have, please make sure that you're able to put them into the chat box or into, of course, the Q&A. And we'll try to leave as much time as possible towards the end to make sure that we share that there. If any of you are having trouble with the audio or the video, I would suggest that you either log out and re-sign back in. That might help with the process as well. Now, let me talk before I get started and preface this. Sales in of itself is a mandatory process in every individual or every entrepreneur's career. It's about the essence of the business, and that's really evolved over time. For any of you who have been in sales long enough, you might recall we used to refer to what's called door-to-door sales. This was a very big thing. That's certainly where my career path started. As a much younger individual, I actually started out in door-to-door selling. It's not a very pleasant experience, but it's something that was crucial in teaching me about rejection and a bit of a thicker skin that's there. From door-to-door selling, we moved on to cold calling. And I suspect many of you on this here webinar might have been through this process. In fact, 13 years ago, I repeated the cycle when I came out to Dubai and started on cold calling in order to build up a practice. But over time, we were told, oh, no, that's not very effective. And it evolved further. And we started to talk about exhibitions and conferences, and we would rent out these booths. And that became really the big thing. And everyone told us, this is the way to sell. You're going to reach a lot more people. It's the masses. And then somehow we were told, no, it's evolved yet again. And we moved into networking events. And we were told that's the best way to go about it. Grab a stack of business cards and just hand them out like you're handing candy. And that's surely going to create a lot of business for you. And that's effectively what we did. But then it even evolved further. And we started to get into mailing campaigns. And this is mailing, yes, before any of the internet or the apps that we use today. And we were told, listen, if we can get out as much mailers to companies, to individuals, we can advertise, people will get a chance to see that, and you're going to get a lot of business. And we did that. And of course, needless to say, we evolved once again, and we got into SMS sales techniques, or even WhatsApp calling. I received that today with WhatsApp, a number of requests for interviews and sales and marketing tactics and so on. And even that evolved further, where we got into where we are today, the world of social selling. And I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about this today because I can tell you in our business, certainly for the last 6 or 7 years, social selling has been a detrimental part of our growth and what we've been doing. And it is part of our strategy, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Now, over the years, as this continued to evolve, and it certainly has been the case, there's some things that simply don't change when it comes to sales. But I want to put this into context of why has this become so important? Why do we talk about sales strategies today and the right sales team? There's been changes that's happened, and there's a wonderful story that comes from the 40s. In Oxford University, Dr. Einstein was setting up a physics exam for his students when his assistant came running in, freaking out, saying, my goodness, the questions, doctor, are the same as last year's. And Einstein replied that the questions are still the same. However, the answers have changed. And I can't find anything more true than what happened in the sales world for us today. The demands or even the environment that we're in sales, that really hasn't changed. It's how we respond to it that has. So having the right sales team and strategies become a critical element that we're going to talk about today. And there's a reason for this, and we're considering what are the changes that are out there. You see, studies are showing us that today's customer is no longer influenced by advertising or the traditional advertising. While it still plays a role, and forgive me for those that might have marketing backgrounds, it's not that that's gone out. It's just it's evolved that now today we're not as influenced by advertising as we used to. More so to the point is that we would rather buy a car and rent a house, an apartment, which is certainly not the generations before us that told us, my parents' generations that always buy your house, build equity, rent a car or lease a car if you have to. That's been turned upside down. So the dynamics in the market have changed dramatically. People, of course, review blogs before they make a purchase. They're more informed than they ever were beforehand. They value authenticity. It's more important than the actual content. So they want to feel an engagement with the company that they're working with. And future inheritance won't actually change buying behaviors. What we're seeing to now, and what we have been for the last almost decade and the decades to come, is that how we spend today and the buying behaviors that we have are not going to be influenced by a sudden influx of cash into our lives. We are doing what we probably will continue to do for the next little while. They want to engage with brands on social networks. So they recognize that their brand today is no longer simply a product or a service, but rather much more, and that's the engagement that they're looking for. And incidentally, study shows that we want to co-create products with companies. Customers are itching to be part of that process and part of that end service that we're providing. And they want to use multiple tech devices. They want to be able to reach companies in different formats, be it WhatsApp or SMS or online, of course. They want to feel that that engagement is well beyond the traditional norms of communication. And they've become brand loyal. And let me say that today, I certainly see that in my behaviors, that if I find the brand that I like, I tend to gravitate towards that brand on a continual basis, and that's become very important. And they expect brands to give back to society. And that's something we haven't seen in a very long time, but it's been that case for the last couple of years. And we're going to see more and more of that that there's an engagement that has to happen within society, that we give back, not we simply take. And that's a very important aspect that I'll touch on a little bit later on. So incidentally, as much as now we know about where the customer of today or the client of today is, I want to take a look at some of the skills as defined by the World Economic Forum on what's become important out there. And they're telling us that we need people with analytical thinking, creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, and agility, motivation and self-awareness, curiosity and lifelong learning, technological literacy, dependability and the attention to detail, empathy and active listening, leadership and social influence, and quality control. Now, these do fall into certain categories, and I've highlighted them in a color schematic. It's the cognitive skills that we need, the self-efficacy, some management skills, technology, and the ability to work with others. Now, what's interesting about these is so many of them are pure people skill sets, either looking inwards at us through resilience, flexibility, and agility, motivation, and self-awareness, and at the same time, our curiosity and dependability, as much as they are to the outside world of empathy and active listening and leadership and social influence. These are the demands of today's skill sets, according to the Future of Jobs report in 2023. Now, this tells me that there's a demand that's happening that maybe we did not see before. The technical skill sets that we look for. And this is a tricky one when it comes to sales. We talk about technical skills, and people struggle with that. They struggle with the idea of what does that really mean in selling? And I'm going to look at this from a different perspective. Either for those of you that are starting out and wondering, I'm going to start hiring a sales team, what does that look like? Or as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, as an entrepreneur yourself, you are effectively in sales. Every single day that you're out there, that's exactly what you're doing. So the advice that I'm going to give you is much to you as an entrepreneur or a business owner as it is to any sales team member that you hire. Now, as much as all of this is going on, and we've seen the evolution of selling, and we've seen what the customer looks like today, and we've seen the skills that we're requiring, fact of the matter is there remains certain elements that don't change within sales. And it's about being visible, and that's an important one. It's about being likable. It's about building trust with people. It's about establishing relations and ultimately creating the sale. Now, as simple as that sounds, you might walk away and say, Edward, this is phenomenal. I think of myself as visible, likable. I build trust. It's all about relations for me, and it's about creating the sale. And that's very true, of course, for many of us. But it's how do we create this in others? What do we need to find in other individuals? Now, I've been as I said, in sales for, I guess, about 25 years or so now. And through that, I spent a good part of my career in sales management. So I've seen many a salesperson come through my doors, people that I've interviewed and have not made the cut. And I want to share with you today what I call successful sales traits. And they're not necessarily the traditional elements. It's not about what's on somebody's CV or resume or how much sales they've made in the past. That's important, don't get me wrong. Their education, their background, their experience. Naturally, if you're vetting for a sales team, these are elements that we look for. But there are other aspects that have become ingrained in our sales recruitment process today, because it's important to us to look at these sales traits when we're looking at hiring sales team members. And I can tell you that these are things that we've got to keep in mind. There are 5 elements that I'm going to share with you. The 5th one, I'm going to get into a lot more detail into that, simply because it's part of our sales strategy. But I want to make sure that we cover these 5, at the very least, if we touch on them, to give you a better idea of what we're looking for. Now, the first thing, and it might seem ridiculous that we have to talk about this, but it's positivity. And I do this within the interview process. To me, people's outlook on life, their sense of positivity is such a critical aspect that's there. Mahatma Gandhi had once said, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become actions become habits, and habits become values, and values become your destiny. And that's always rung true for me, that it's the sense of positivity that people carry through there. Do they have a belief that their future is far greater than their present? And can they convey that in interviews and conversations that we have with them as we're building the team and we're interviewing these individuals? To me, it's so important that we recognize what that looks like to individuals. And let me tell you a little bit more about this a little bit further. I have a massive belief that people, I'd like to think of everybody as positive, some people kind of flip by the wayside and they don't necessarily carry that through there. Gallup does a survey on people in organizations every year. And the survey almost every single year comes out with almost identical results. They find that nearly 20% of people in organizations are super positive. These guys are excited. They're over the moon. You can sense the energy that they bring with them. It is absolutely phenomenal, and it's even infectious if we talk about that as well. Now, when we talk about this here, and we talk about this 20%, and I'm going to use a story to be able to tell this here. I suspect many of us on this call are familiar with the children's story or the books or even the cartoon Winnie the Pooh. And there's a very important character in Winnie the Pooh that's super excited all the time, super positive. And that's, if you know the storyline, that would be Tigger. Even his song is exciting. It's that bouncy, 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 bounce. It's so phenomenal. He's one of those characters. Oh, let's do this. Let's do that. Yes, it's possible. We can do everything. It's an unbelievable energy that's there. 20% of people in organizations are referred to, or at least I refer to them as Tiggers. Now, there's another 20% in the survey that finds that people that are absolutely negative. They are, in fact, toxic. And if I go back to my Winnie the Pooh story, this would be the Eeyores of the world. And this is, everything is a chore. Everything is excessive. It's just too much work. I have to move here. You want me to call the client? You want me to do this or that? I don't know. They're going to say no again. It's that negativity that spreads constantly that's there. And that's something that we've got to get beyond that. There's another 60% in organizations that kind of fall in between. They're neither positive or negative. And in the storyline, this is what we call Winnie the Pooh. It's about show me the honey. You've got to show me something that I get excited about. And this here is important because it defines to me what your sales team could look like. That we potentially end up with Eeyores. They do well in an interview. They look phenomenal on paper. But something might be missing in that sales team, and we've got to look a little bit deeper when it comes into that. So it's really about weeding out those Eeyores because they will drag the organization down. Eeyores are the people that'll grab the Winnie the Pooh that's sitting around indifferent, doing the job. It doesn't matter what position they have in the company. And they'll tell them, let's have a cup of coffee, and they'll complain and whine about everything to them, and they'll drag these individuals down. Now, for those of us over the years that are able to do this, it's about getting the Tiggers in the organization, but I would not discount the Winnie the Pooh individuals. Winnie the Pooh is about show me the money, and I don't mean the literal money, but it's showing them the sense of motivation of what is it that they can do to grow with you as a startup, to find out what it is that they're able, what their future could look like, and that fits into your hands. One of the elements that I look for is the fact that to me, there's this world of abundance, right? And I look for that. I've grown up in a sales environment where there is endless opportunity out there. And I still believe that to this day. People tell me you're in a very highly competitive environment. We're all in a highly competitive environment. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're in any industry today, you've got a competitor. It is very few people out there that are going out there and creating something so unique that doesn't exist. So we've got to accept that. But it's also recognizing that there's so much for the taking and there's plenty for everyone. No matter how much in business we bring in and we sign on, I think about this and I say, you know what? There's another 100 million out there. There's another 200 million out there. There's another billion out there. It's there. But over time, I've also come across people who believe in scarcity. They find that one lead, that one prospect, and they hang on to them for dear life. They're not hanging on to them for dear life because that's the sales process. They're hanging on to them because of scarcity. They're too afraid to lose that potential client, that prospect, and that mentality is deadly for an organization. What you're looking for in sales traits as you build your sales team is one of abundance. It's people that see boundless opportunity and they go after it at all times. Now, we play a role as a startup, as a leader, as an entrepreneur. You have just as much a role to play into that and what you see. It's about the sense of optimism that they bring to the table and that we instill in them that becomes very important. Equally, it's this notion of achievement drive. My job as a sales leader is not to knock on people's door and wake them up in the morning and say, come on, let's go. I want to find that achievement drive. I want to understand why they left the other organization. What is it that they're looking for? And I want to know what excites them, what gets them up in the morning. It's not about their sales skills alone. It's not about the money alone. I want desire that's there and I want to understand that. But I also want people who appreciate contentment, that they can celebrate the wins that they have and they can now look forward for the next opportunity. So it's that achievement drive and contentment. Incidentally, this happens to fall into one of the skill sets within emotional intelligence of self-motivation. And it's one of the skills, actually, if you put emotional intelligence and self-motivation together, it's two of the skills that are found in the World Economic Forum report that I shared with you earlier. So this becomes an important aspect that's there. Look for people that are going to lift you up and lift themselves up as well, not simply look to be lifted on a continual basis and go through that. Now, the second sales trait that I want to share with you today is imagination. And this is almost a word to the wise for those of you that are startups or entrepreneurs and you're starting to build your team. It's not that people don't bring their imagination with them. It's sometimes that we squash their imagination for them. And this is something I'm putting out there very bluntly. It starts with us. But at the same time, I want to find people who can have that imagination because that gives us the ability to think freely and innovate. It's about translating an idea or an invention into a good or service that creates value. It must be replicable at an economic cost and satisfy a specific need. And it's a deliberate application of information, imagination, and initiative that's converted to useful product. This is advice to you as much as it is to your sales team. I would urge you, look for ways to harness imagination within the team. Yes, I know that we have got our processes. You might have been proud of the way that you're doing things. That does not mean that the only way that to do something is the way we've done it. There might be some phenomenal ideas that come from the oddest places within an organization. Give your team a chance, give them a voice to be able to provide that. And there's a very important aspect that I want to talk about. There's a concept that I refer to as karaoke capitalism. I suspect all of us are familiar with karaoke. And if you've been there and you've done it, let's face it, we're not professional singers, unless that's the business that you're in, of course. But the reality is karaoke, by definition, means we're singing somebody else's song. And we clearly don't do it as well as they do. If we did, we would not be a startup. We would not be going after our dream. We'd be on some stage somewhere with Beyonce, with Michael Bublé, or whomever else that you love as a singer. That would be the case to do. Now, in the world of capitalism, karaoke capitalism is when we take somebody else's idea and we apply it to our business thinking it's going to work. This photo here is what probably to most of you would look like, if we had to guess, it looks like an Apple store. And I call this the Appleization in other industries. This is actually a bank. And this is a bank that was so keen to be hip and be cool, just like Apple stores, and they failed miserably. Because let's face it, nobody wants to go into a bank that looks like an Apple store. That's not what I'm there for, to give my savings or my investments, whatever it might be to. It simply does not work. So it's not about singing somebody else's song because we're going to do it poorly, but it's about singing our song brilliantly. So when I talk about innovation or even invention and imagination, I would urge you to find team members who dig deep into that imagination and share ideas with you and give them that voice and that opportunity to do so. The more we're able to do that, the more we're able to grow. And as I said, this goes for you as an entrepreneur. Keep that in mind and make sure that when you're interviewing for that sales team, as you build your team, look for even ounces of imagination. Ask about that within their past experiences, even ideas for your own business. Within the interview process, I've asked people, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? How would you to deal with this particular challenge? It is amazing the information that comes out of there. We look for that in the essence of people, and it certainly helps in the growth of the team overall. Let me talk about customer centricity. And I know this is something that we talk a lot about it, and everybody says, of course, I'm customer centric. The customer is the heart of my business. And I really want to question that for a moment. Now, let me explain what I mean by customer centricity. To me, it's the merger of a number of things that have to happen. First off, it's about the value of the customer, and it's recognizing how important they are. I don't believe in the customer is always right. We've had our differences with clients in the past, simply because I know that I value the customer in a certain way, and I want to make sure that that is mutual respect. And when we give that respect, we get it in return. So it's the value that we place on them, how we can contribute to them as much as they can contribute to us. It's about the customer experience as well, from beginning to end, whether it's your website, the engagement, the way that you answer the phone, the emails that you write, that entire journey that they go through, that's part of that process there. And it's the life cycle that's there. It's not about the buying of your product, that one-time item. It's about the repeat customer. It's about that sense of loyalty that's created, the entire life cycle that goes through there, all the way up to referrals and continued business with the existing client. When we get these three right is what we call customer centricity. So it goes well beyond the aspect of making sure that we simply delivered a product or service and the deal is done and we've gotten paid. It's far more than that. It's what happens when the customer leaves your business, they purchase your product or service and they leave you. That's where the process continues on as that life cycle and experience, and it matters just as much. There are companies out there that have mastered this. They've built an entire experience around this. I suspect, like many of you on the call, I'm a fan of IKEA. It is amazing what this company has done to be truly customer centric. People go there by the hordes, and it's not because they're cheap. While they might be cost effective, their prices have gone through the roof, and they still attract customers because they've made it an entire experience. They're part of that life cycle, from the student that's starting out in university and needs a bit of furniture, to the young family, to the family that's growing up where they've got children. They want to make sure they keep changing furniture, whatever it might be. My goodness, I suspect there isn't one of us on this call that's gone into an IKEA and walked out with only the item that you went looking for. They've mastered the customer-centric experience that's there. Even in COVID, they pivoted where they've created a virtual experience within your own home while utilizing their own products. British Airways is another one. They've created an in-flight experience manual for their business class, telling you from where the cheeses come from to where the leather that's on the seats of the aircraft. Every tiny detail is thought out and well documented. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. And then there's one of my favorite companies, Zappos.com in the United States. This is a true success story started by a fella named Tony Hsieh. Tony started this company many years ago, a young startup at the age of 24. Took whatever money he made from his prior startup and plopped it into this. This is before online shopping was even a thing, and they sell shoes online. They've created an entire experience on constantly exceeding the expectation of the customer, and every imaginable level, from their phone lines to the way they train their people, to the experience of shopping online. Every part of it, even the delivery and the returns policy, is all customer centric because they understand the life cycle of the customer. What I'm talking about here is something that I within customer centricity that I want to identify. We all have in our businesses something called implicit, and I'm going to use a hotel example as the most common example I think every one of us can relate to. I travel a significant bit for work. That's come back after COVID. I used to travel pre-COVID about 160 to 180 days a year. And there's something I refer to as implicit service. These are things I don't think about when I'm traveling. when my staff books me at a hotel, I don't ask them, is there a TV in the room? Is there a bed? Are there towels? Is it clean? These are implicit. They don't even cross my mind anymore. This is not about customer service. It is the absolute basic element of what we provide, money in return for service. So I don't necessarily think about that. The next level up is what I call expected. And if I go back to my hotel experience, this is today, it's a satellite wall-mounted TV, possibly, of course, free Wi-Fi, maybe some snacks in the room, a coffee facility, preferably an espresso machine. These have become expectations that I have within business. But there's a whole third level, and that's the impressed and delighted. And I think this is maybe where we fail. And I want to address this with regards to building your sales team. It goes beyond the expected. And I'll talk about this in a moment, but I'll share with you going back to the hotel. A few years ago, and I suspect for those of you on the call, if you've ever stayed at a hotel, I'll give you the answer right off the bat. For most of us, there's a survey that's done on the guest experience. It's run every year by a major company. And they ask guests, what is the first thing they do and they look for in a hotel when they check in? The number one response for every single year, bar none, has been that the first thing I do is I check the bathroom. It's an amazing obsession that we have. I don't know what it is. I suspect I know what it is. I think it's those little shampoo bottles. We're trying to figure out what we're going to swipe and take home with us. And that's perfectly fine. But that happens to be the number one answer. Number two and three, they alternate every year. Between the view out the window and the comfort of the bed. But those are really the top three. And a few years ago, this is going back maybe 11 years by now, I was, again, one of my business trips, exhausted. I got to the hotel, checked in, got to my room, and sure enough, I did what I always do. I opened the bathroom door to take a look. Inside was one of these, a little rubber ducky. Now, when I first saw this thing, I thought to myself, maybe that the hotel has forgotten to clean up the room. But when I went a little bit closer, there was a tag on the duck's neck, and it said, enjoy simpler times. Now, needless to say, I called the hotel. I said, look, what's the deal with the duck? And they said, listen, a lot of our travelers are business travelers. We know you're exhausted, you're tired. We hope that you're able to draw a bath and just remember your childhood days, something that's much simpler. And that stuck with me ever since then. I refer to this now as the duck factor. And this is what's impressive and delightful. And if you can imagine now, I go around hotels and other businesses and I look for the duck factor, figuratively speaking, of course. It's something that impresses and delights me. And every business has this opportunity. But you see, when it comes to our sales teams, what often happens is we tell them how we want things run. We lay out the business process. We give them some sales training, whatever it is that you do to get them onboarded and ready. And they deliver on expectation, but they don't go above and beyond to impress and delight the customer. And that's partly our fault as a startup, as a business. It is our responsibility to continually to look for that. And the more that we can help our sales team as we build it, find these ways to find that duck factor, we are in a much better position long term. These are what we call moments of truth. They are never to be repeated opportunities to distinguish ourselves in a memorable fashion from each and every one of our competitors. The duck factor is everybody's responsibility, and we've got to find people that are willing to do that, to go above and beyond. In today's competitive environment, delivering on the customer's expectations, that middle circle that we saw, is simply not enough. It's about impressing and delighting. So I would urge you to find your duck factor and find out how it is that you're going to go above and beyond and make sure that we're able to deliver this wow experience. And I can guarantee you that this leaves an impression both on your team members and on your customers. It's a very important message that I'm not just sending for your sales team as how you upskill them, but to you as an entrepreneur, as a startup as well. Let me share with you the fourth element, which is storytelling. In the world of sales, and for those of you that have been selling for your own business, you know this, it is about finding our story. I use other businesses as examples, and I've used some already today here. But to me, I look for salespeople who are great storytellers. I don't want them to sell me a product. I don't want them to tell me the features and benefits. I want them to have me absorbed fully into the story that they're telling. So even in our interview process, we continually look for storytellers. And you'll notice businesses have created phenomenal stories. Starbucks sells coffee. It is just coffee. But it is amazing how they've taken the simplest concept, a beverage that we've had for thousands of years, and they've managed to turn it into a phenomenon. Whether that's the marketing gaffes that they run with the misspelling of the names, or simply the fact that they actually ask for your name and you hop on over to the end of the counter and you wait for that name, Edward, and you proudly look at that cup of coffee that was custom designed for you. There's a story behind this experience, and we all feel it and we all share it with others, and we feel that warmth that's around there. Other businesses have succeeded at this. Virgin Atlantic a few years ago decided to create a Christmas surprise, this notion of pay it forward. And they left a little marginal gift on everybody's seat on one of their flights. And it just went ballistic with people. They enjoyed it so much. It was the talk of the town. And these are stories that are created. I use one from Canada. We've got a budget airline. They're no longer budget. WestJet, they're the rival to our national airline, Air Canada. And they did this Christmas miracle. You can find the video on YouTube. It is baffling to see this. But I want to bring this up. Needless to say, this was a marketing gimmick, but it exploded from a sales perspective. This is something that has received 328 million media impressions worldwide. They saw an 86% increase in revenue. And this happened a few years ago, yet people still talk about this story. WestJet moved from a budget airline that was backseat to Air Canada to now busier than Air Canada by aircraft size and mileage that they run. So it tells me that there's a story everywhere. And the more that you can compel your sales team to tell stories about your product and your service, to engage with the customer that's there, the more success that you're going to see that's there. And I would urge you, look for storytellers early on. It doesn't start well beyond the onboarding. It starts in the interview process. Look for how they speak and how they talk about their past and their successes, and you'll find the stories in there. And that's when you've got a great sales team member at that point in time. So keep that in mind. All right, I want to get into the fifth and final element, which is digital mastery. And I'm going to spend a fair bit of time on this one here, because to me, this is not one of the most, it's a critical element today to our success. I talked about the evolution of selling when we started. We talked about social selling. And to me, digital mastery is not a nice to have. It is an absolute necessity for success. And it is the reason I'm going to spend time on this is where our sales strategy happens to fit in there today. Christina Newberry, from Hootsuite, back in 2017 said that social selling is the art of using social networks to find, connect with, understand, and nurture sales prospects. It's the modern way to develop meaningful relationships with potential customers that keep you and your brand front of mind, so you're the natural first point of contact when a prospect is ready to buy. I loved that quote. It was so on point for what that means today to be a social seller. And it is so important that we find people and we build our strategy around this here. Now, businesses and salespeople are to a degree utilizing this. Majority of businesses have some form of social media presence. And I suspect each and every one of you on this webinar do so today here. However, they're not making it a social selling a priority. In fact, the majority of top salespeople use LinkedIn and social selling tools almost exclusively. We've migrated to that strategy several years ago. We use LinkedIn Sales Navigator, mind you, which is even deeper than LinkedIn on its own, but it is part of our process. And I think one of the biggest disappointing elements here, that despite having a social media presence, most businesses do not have a documented social selling process or strategy. And I think this is an important element here, because we recognize the importance of this here and how the world has changed around us. We've got a responsibility to our sales team, to the strategy, and to your growth to make sure that we build that up there. Now, customers have become better informed. And I talked about this earlier on. And that means we've got to make sure that we understand the buyer behavior. That means researching online, reading reviews, comments. They check out social media pages and profiles. They ask others' opinions through blogs and social networks. They watch videos from key opinion leaders and influencers and experts. They've become far more informed, and they look for social acceptance and popularity. These are elements we've got to keep in mind. Customers today enjoy following their favorite brands and personalities on social media. They enjoy that content that's there as long as it's valuable. I don't care how large or smaller you are in an organization, social selling and that digital mastery has to be a part of your process and your strategy. Let me share some numbers with you on social selling. This is a study that was done about 3 years ago, 2019, right before COVID, on social sellers versus non-social selling. They found that when it comes to volume of acquiring new customers, 65% for social sellers, 47% for non-social. Speed of acquiring new business, 57% versus 29%. The conversion rate of new customers, 46 to 31. And those that meet their revenue goals in 12 months, 78% versus 38%. Social selling is something that's here to stay. It is about taking the old traditional mentality of the one-to-one and turning it into the one-to-many. That's the world that we're in today, and we've got to be able to do that. So we've got to build a strategy around that. That means understanding your customer profile and the persona. Those are two different things. We talk about customer personas. What does that look like? We give our customers names or the personas names, so we recognize that what kind of person we're dealing with, what kind of company. We look at sales that go through that, the story that's around it. We make sure that we've got a sales story within our strategy. It's about prospecting, the ideal prospects and identity, and at least one touch point. We use 4 touch points minimum in order to convert a sale through social selling. So we make sure that we're preparing for that there. And then we build up our audience to connect with the ideal prospect in a meaningful and personalized way. So it is no longer about picking up the phone. It's not about conferences and exhibitions. It's not about networking events. It's not about sending out a WhatsApp in the hope that somebody buys your product or gets on board with your service. It's about building an audience that you're able to engage with. From there, it comes down to relationship building. It's about converting new connections to friends and fans and re-engaging the older ones to convert them to fans. That's part of the process. And when we do this, we're able to move on to that next phase of the outreach, which means we create an offer that fans cannot say no to, and we communicate that offer on the one hand, and we personalize it on the other. So we're building up that entire experience in social selling. This is today's world, and it has to be part of your strategy to build that up. Now, I'm going to talk about something that we utilize. We refer to it as tech, which is target, engage, call to action, convert, and champion. We're not going to have a lot of time to get into every ounce of detail, but there's a lot of steps within there. But I do want to highlight some very important aspects here when it comes to social selling and part of our social selling strategy. These people that are in our target, we tend to refer to them as prospects, but they don't become a prospect until we engage them. Until then, they're a suspect. They're unbeknownst of our service. They don't even know who we are. They are simply a suspect. That's the wider base. That's the target. We need to move them to prospect. We need to make sure they become qualified with a call to action. We need to convert them through closes and champion them through customers. That's the process that we have here. So we're looking about searching. We're looking to search for our target audience, attracting those prospects with posts, with content, everything that we have, and ensuring that we have industry mavens, expert by association and promoters that we're able to collaborate with. But then it's about connecting and interacting, sending them offers, information, building momentum, articles, pieces of interest, whatever it might be, comment, like, give value. And I'm going to come back to that a little bit later on as well. It's about inviting the audience and the prospect to groups, pages, channels. It's about the webinars as we have today. It's about mailing lists, it's about asking for a commitment and scheduling a call. That's the CTA that we're looking for. Before we can get into the taking that lead offline, as much as we talk about social selling, it's not about making sales online. This is still about building relations, as I mentioned early on. And that means there has to be an interaction. We are human beings after all, and we thrive on that. So it's about taking that lead offline and able to make sure that we build that relationship, confirm that, and we close the sale. But the championing part is the key part where our prospects become customers or champions. They help us promote the business and give permissions to go further and encourage that sharing. In the last 5 years, our business has gone from about 80% in social selling, 20% in referral business. Today, it sits at 40% social selling, 60% referrals. And we certainly use those champions as much as possible to elevate that experience. And we go back to the target where we're looking for additional clients through the help of our champions who already know and adore the services that we provide. So I would urge you to define your target prospects and ensure that you're engaged with the decision makers network. It's not about the decision makers themselves. A lot of entrepreneurs or startups, I hate to say this, fail because they're so focused on that decision maker. And when they can't get through, or the barriers that they face, they tend to fail. They realize, I'm not going to get them as a client. They move on. It's about getting their network that's there, their influencers, the key opinion leaders, colleagues, immediate and distant, social media connections and groups, whatever might be around us. That's who we're looking for. It's building that wall around that decision maker and getting into it, or being on the same wavelength as them. That's where the value is here. Now, for many of you that might be familiar with LinkedIn, and if you're not, I really hope that you get on there very, very quickly and you become an expert in that there. Not because I'm positioning LinkedIn as the end all be all, but I can tell you, it saved me as a startup 13 years ago, and it's been a big part of our business ever since then. And we all know about the visible connections that's there. You get to see up to 3 degrees of separation. You can use LinkedIn search engine that people also viewed to see connections, but it's the hidden connections beyond the 3rd degree. And I can tell you, we found gems in these areas. We use LinkedIn groups extensively for this here. We even use Google X-ray search. I'll talk about this in a minute here. But it's about going beyond the obvious. It's about finding out how can you dig deeper and deeper to make sure that you leverage that network that's there. For those of us that don't have that network, or we're building up, we're trying to get our business cracking, you might have been in the corporate world and you weren't paying attention to LinkedIn or your social presence, and today you're a startup, you're an entrepreneur, and it's become more and more part of your practice. Make sure to build that up there. Link with people with 500 plus connections. Ask a connection to share your content on their network. I remember very recently, one of my connections, he's a general manager for one of the FMCG companies in Dubai, in the UAE and beyond, contacted me on LinkedIn, said, Edward, I love the fact that you're always liking my contact. I would love to see you comment more and share my content. And I thought to myself, this guy is a GM. He doesn't need the audience. He doesn't need the spotlight, but he's out there getting it because that's what great business people do. And then, despite not needing it, he was taking a page out of what we talk about in social selling and doing exactly that and ensuring that engagement is there. Ask connections for referrals to your target prospects. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to make an introduction. Tag connections in your posts and collaborate as part of an event or campaign to boost your business, particularly in the early stages. It's a key part of a selling strategy, or at least your business build-up strategy and your marketing campaign. Now, I find so many people don't recognize this or realize this, but the Boolean keyword searches that we use in Google are available inside LinkedIn. It's already built up for that, but we're not using it enough. So we've got to make sure that we make this part of our process. We make sure that we refine our results, we find our target audience, and make sure that we pinpoint who it is that we're looking for. Now, I mentioned Google X-ray search, and for those of you that are not familiar with this, this is a search engine add-on. Google has it, of course. And actually, it applies onto LinkedIn, and you're able to utilize this to go further, find information, refine your searches well beyond what LinkedIn provides you as a general search. You have these through various websites, apps, and as a Google Chrome extension that allows you to do this. Start small, test it out, but I can tell you it's well worth it to look into how to find your ideal customer. Most startups struggle in this area. It's about building a customer base, and they're desperate to make those sales. Make sure that you put in the effort to figure that out. So look for Recruiting Search String Builder. Recruiting.net is their site. Intelligence Search is another one. You're going to get this presentation later on, and I'll put my contact details in a few moments in the chat box. But these are crucial in today's world, and going above and beyond and making sure that we've got a sound strategy for finding our customers. I find this is one of the hidden gems of LinkedIn. I absolutely hate groups on LinkedIn. I have found zero value to be a member of the group, to share on there, anything of the sort. What I found phenomenal in groups, though, is access to the members that are there. When you're a member of the same group with somebody else, you're able to contact them directly because you share that group. And this has been a godsend for us in our business to find more and more potential clients. It allows us to reach out to them. We can send, of course, in-mails and other elements in Sales Navigator. We get a lot of in-mails every month that we're able to utilize, but it's an opportunity to connect and find common ground that's there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I hope that you're looking through this here, but I always look it down that the people also view it. Every time I view a person, I look at the other views because I find additional potential clients there. It's again part of every team member's sales strategy, from our admin assistant to some of our project managers to naturally the consultants that are here. Every one of us is on that part of the strategy and how to build that network and how do we collaborate further. Now, I'm going to put a couple of points in here with regards to attracting your target prospects, and it is about engagement. I would investigate and research what's valuable to them, ask them and find out what their current challenges are, pain points, what are their goals and their values and interests. It's about asking and asking and learning and learning. It's not about shoving product or service down their throat. It simply does not work. You've got to build that rapport. Now, for those of you that are struggling with content and about building your persona or your rapport online, I would urge you to look for better ways for content, be that through Google Alerts, Feedly, Paperly, social media news feed, social searcher, creating your own videos, follow other experts and share from them, image searches for inspirational quotes, content-driven social sites, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, or now Threads, Quora, or Reddit. All of these are readily available to you, and you need to be utilizing it. I can tell you firsthand, I don't have the time to sit around and create content. I've got to find it elsewhere. And these are some of the areas that help you do that. And naturally, it's about how do you create this content for easier access that's there. Today, the world of social selling has become easier and easier. There's so much out there to help us out, but you've got to commit to it. And I would urge you, don't go down that rabbit hole. I've met some startups and they're spending 4 or 5 hours a day on LinkedIn, and that's excessive. While it's part of a sales strategy, you still got to get out there. You got to talk to people. You've got to introduce yourself. You've got to engage others offline just as much as you do online. Commit time every day. In my case, it's 45 minutes in the morning and it's another hour in late afternoon for very specific purposes on how I contact, reply, engage with everybody that's there. But for content sharing schedulers, there's Buffer, Hootsuite, HubSpot, SocialBee, and then you've got Q that creates all of this here. It does the work for you. So you've got to get a little bit smarter about how you utilize that. And you can use Chrome apps and extensions to auto-populate the content to your scheduler. The world out there has become a lot easier just as much as it's become complex. And we've got to use every possible tool available to us, especially if we're going to grow that business from the ground up. Some facts on social engagement. And this is from Sprout Social Index, and it's about 1,000 people that were surveyed for this here. 89% of social messages posted by customers go ignored. So imagine that as much as you put in the effort on social selling, we're not responding as much as quickly and as well as we should. On average, brands will take 10 hours to respond to a customer on social media, which is terrible to see that there. It's not the world that we should be in today. 1 in 3 ignored customers will switch to a competitor. 75% of customers are likely to share a good experience in their own profile. 70% of customers are more likely to purchase a brand's product or service as a result of a good experience. 57% of customers are likely to purchase a product or service from a brand that they just because they follow them. And that is mind-blowing to me. It is a huge opportunity that's there. 75% of customers have purchased a product or service they saw on social media. This is the world around us today. It has changed dramatically, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we've got this as part of our selling strategy. We simply cannot do without it. Now, I want to share a word to the wise with you, and I'll put this in story format. This was the race to the South Pole, and there were 2 teams headed up by Captain Robert Scott and Roald Amundsen. And they both set out to the South Pole back in 1910 expedition to be the first man to lead the team there, reach the South Pole. Now, each team applied a different strategy for reaching there and returning safely back to their base camps. One team reached the South Pole first and made it back alive without any injuries, while the other team reached the South Pole second and died on the return journey to their base camp. Now, the 2 strategies were as follows. One team would march as far and as fast as possible as when the conditions were good. When the conditions were bad, they marched less or rested. The second strategy, the other team would march the same number of miles every day, regardless of weather conditions that were good or bad. In the interest of time, I'm not going to pose the question to you on which one of these strategies worked best. However, if you're wondering, it was actually strategy 2 that worked best, and it was Team Amundsen who marched the same number of miles every single day. It was about consistent daily performance when enduring unpredictable conditions. They knew they couldn't predict the conditions, so they planned to consistently march 20 miles every single day. See, the fact of the matter is, social selling and digital mastery is not about waiting for the right moment. It's not about doing it when you've got available time and then quitting the next day because you're so busy. You're meeting with clients and you've got proposals and you're excited about that. Once you drop the ball, you're starting all over again and you don't know when the conditions are favorable. It's about committing yourself to discipline and doing this every single day. And I would urge you that we talk about this as part of your sales strategy. Make sure that you give it the time of day and you think about this in the long term and how you're going to commit to it. Social selling triggers are part of that strategy, and it's about a give first. And I can guarantee you very few of your competitors will be doing this. It's about creating social selling trigger events online, whatever social media platform or social selling platform you use. It's about giving first. That's the value. It's not about asking for an appointment. That comes much later. I mentioned earlier on in the call 4 touch points. That's what it takes us before we even ask for an appointment. We follow up consistently. Then we produce a low barrier offer for a bespoke solution. Then we meet them for the sale. And then we ask for the referral or for the review of the services that we've provided. It is a lengthy process that you've got to give in there, and it's a very important one. These are very important give first strategy processes, or the steps that we take, and make sure you build it part of your process. I would urge you, as you build your sales team and as you look at your sales strategy, make sure that you're constantly looking for team members that have positivity, they're filled with imagination, they take customer centricity seriously, and they understand what that means. They are phenomenal storytellers, and they definitely have mastered the digital world that's out there. As I said earlier, this is not a nice to have, it's an absolute must have. I'm going to leave you with something that I heard when I was much younger from my mentor, who wrote a phenomenal dissertation on the fact of on the secret to success back in 2003. And he talked about that. Edward, he would tell me, look, success, you look at people around you and entrepreneurs, and you say, my goodness, I can't believe they managed to succeed. They're so lucky. They have it going for them. He said, it takes a number of things to be able to get to achieve that. We have to be dreamers. And that's very important. We all need to have these grandiose dreams. And you probably became an entrepreneur and you got into a startup because you're a dreamer. But the fact of the matter is, being a dreamer on its own is not enough. We all see people who dream, but they sit on the couch doing nothing about it. You also have to be a doer. You've got to get up there and do something about it. But you see, being a dreamer and being a doer on their own is not enough. You also need to do it well. You've got to get out there. You've got to perfect your style. You've got to improve on a continual basis. But even then, being a dreamer, being a doer, and doing it well is not enough. You need to do it consistently. You've got to make sure that you stick to something and you discipline yourself and you go after it. And when you're a dreamer and you're a doer and you do it well and you do it consistently, that's when people will look at you and say, Lady Luck has shined on this person or shown on this person. That's what is referred to luck in my world. It's about doing these 4 things on a continual basis, and that's what gets you to succeed. I'm going to pause it here. We're just on time, but I want to open it up to any questions. And while I'm doing that, I'm also going to put my email address in the chat box for any of you that wish to contact me. Please feel free to do so. Here we go. I'm happy and always available if there's anything that you require. I'm going to do a quick scan of the questions that are there. Key differentiators about service versus product sales and IT. That's a great question. It's an anonymous question. I would tell you that, look, the fact of the matter is, IT is one of those baffling worlds, and it scares most organizations, and it certainly does in large and small scale. And the fact of the matter is we tend to be talked to as from a technical perspective as if we're idiots. And at least I found that in many an organization. And it's about really the humanity of it. It's about recognizing that you're providing a service, not just a product. That even when you're providing support services or anything of the sort, or even the product itself, it's the full service experience. It's about finding your duck factor and what that means to you. as you're building that up there. There's another question on selling strategy to consider specific B2B targeted audience, VP, CTO founders. Honestly, I think the response to that, it comes down to who your target audience is going to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be the top level, that big decision maker. There are other ways to get through there in business to business, as I mentioned earlier on. But finding out who your target audience is just as important. We often cast this massive wide net in the hope that something comes through there. That doesn't necessarily work. We've got to get serious about who we want to talk to. It could be from multiple industry. It could be in a particular function, VP, CTOs, founders, as you mentioned in your question. That's up to you to figure out, but I would urge you to spend some time. That very first process of tech, the TECC, T is target, and we've got to spend a fair bit of time understanding our clientele and who we want to work with long term. To me, customers and clients are part of the family, and we've got to like who we're dealing with. That means we've got to make sure that we vet them. We're chasing the right people. It's not just getting the dollar. That's important, and I recognize as a startup, it's critical as well. I'm going to jump over to the chat box to see if there's any questions there. I do see a lot of communication that's come through. Yes, we will be sharing the slides later on. Somebody's commented about bathroom hygiene. When you're going to find the dog, absolutely. Very good. Yes, it's being recorded. Thank you. Somebody said, I love the Tigger. Most of all, Winnie the Pooh, without a doubt. Yes, the depressed donkey is there as well. Let me go back to the questions. I think RB asked, if a salesperson is not using social selling, what's the strategy next? I think you've got to rethink that. If they're not using it, this is a top-down approach. The messaging has to come from the very top. It does not come from them as an individual. So I would urge you to spend the time to find out, are you promoting this? Are you explaining the importance of it? But I would also remind you that some people, if you already have these people on your team, do not discount them that they're not willing to learn. It might simply be that they fear social selling. They don't understand it enough. It's a wide world out there, and they're simply worried that they're not getting it right. So give them the time of day. Recognize that they might need some help and support and assistance before you dismiss them. For new hires, on the other hand, I would urge you to make sure that this is part of your hiring process. Digital mastery and social selling today is a must-have, and they need to be experts at this. So look for that in your hiring process or your interview process. There's another question regarding imagination, creativity. Our thoughts are influenced by our knowledge and experience. You know what? You're absolutely right there. And I do think that it's important as startups or business owners, entrepreneurs, at the end of the day, you are guiding that business and you've got your experience, the knowledge, and the reason that you started to start it through there. So I don't agree with you that all of these experiences end up leading to it's not really original ideas. It's not about invention, and that's where I think the genuine or the originality is important. But innovation is often taking an idea that exists today and simply making it better, making the experience about it more pleasing, whatever it might be. That's what I'm looking for when it comes to imagination. And yes, it could be experimental at times, but I can guarantee you a lot of businesses have tried this that have opened up, and I could have given you countless examples in companies that have allowed employees' imagination to be the order of the day. And they've made a killing on this here. They saved, I should say, in many cases, it's about saving money as well, which is phenomenal. There's a question about singing our song brilliantly. How do we have the courage to do that? Look, if you've taken the first step into startup or entrepreneurship, you've already taken that first step into singing your own song. It's about finding out what it means for it to be brilliant, and be true to yourself. It's not about catering just to everybody out there. It's reality. The reality is it's about finding what you're passionate about and how you can deliver excellence every single time. There's a question, and I think I'll take this last question unless Valerie tells me otherwise. What is the role of the marketing manager in social selling? An amazing question. I think today the lines between sales and marketing have become quite murky. It's no longer as defined as it used to be. Marketing folks sit over here, sales folks sit over there. The reality is social selling is everybody's responsibility. If you look at major organizations today, when a post comes out, it's reshared by anybody and everybody, from administrative assistants to technical people to engineers. It doesn't matter. Everybody's a participant in it. Doesn't mean everybody has to do it, of course not. But it means that the marketing particularly has a key role to play in there They, at the end of the day, walk through brand. They're responsible for above the line, below the line marketing strategies, whatever it might be that's there. It feeds into the social selling component, and they do have to work together. They have to make sure that they're in sync on the strategy and how we can build that further. At the end of the day, the more people that we can get on board for this, the more successful that experience is going to be. I will take one more question. Salespeople are insecure in terms of they don't want anybody to interfere in their sales process. I would agree and disagree with this here. I can tell you the insecurity. Look, I find salespeople tend to be, if they're true salespeople, this is the career they've picked for themselves. They are the eternal optimists. To me, when you pick a career path in sales, and let's face it, not one of us at the age of 11, 12, when we were asked in school, what do you want to be when you grow up? They said, I want to be in sales. It's simply a conversation we don't have. But we end up in that career path, and they are some of the most optimistic, resilient people. You go through rejection after rejection every single day. You're beaten down. Customers telling you, no, not interested. No, thank you. Not right now. We wake up the next morning and say, all right, brand new day. Let's do this all over again. That's the thinking that's there. So it's not necessarily about insecurity, but they are very much a dominant type of individuals. You don't run into too many that are sheepish or quiet. Most of them happen to be that. That said, I've met many a quiet, timid kind of salesperson, and they actually use that to their advantage. I think the fact of the matter is if you've got a well-built strategy and you're sharing that and you're co-creating the process with them and you're working for their benefit, so you can show them the what's in it for me, and you can show them the entire experience that's there and the benefits to them, and you're there side by side. I don't think it's a matter of insecurity. I think it's a matter of they see the win for everybody. And at the end of the day, every salesperson, as long as the bonus and or commission or whatever might be the structure is there, they are motivated to do more. And I want it to always be more than just the money. When I talk about that, show me the honey with Winnie the Pooh, honey is about the experience. It's about the culture that you're creating. It's about the success that's starting at the ground up, from a startup, from a new business. All of these are critical factors that build into there. I know we are well past time. I do apologize, but I do appreciate for the questions that came through, and many of you that stayed on the call. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I wish you the very best of luck, and remember, be a dreamer, be a doer, do it well, do it consistently, and luck will find its way to you. Thank you very much, everyone.